best thing. I'm the new best thing. Better than you've ever seen. I'm the new best thing. Cause I'm the new best thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President of Hedera Hashgraph, Tom Trowbridge.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone live streaming. And hello, future. Thank you guys all for coming. This is going to be a terrific night. I want to start by thanking the Hashgraph team. We've been working really hard on this for a while. You'll recognize us by our HBAR pins. If you see one of us, give us a hug. We can use it. I also want to thank our investors. Our investors literally made this happen. Without them, we wouldn't be here. So thank you. And thanks to our partners. You've seen some of them outside when you came in. Please say hello, introduce yourself, learn what they're doing. We really appreciate their support. And we look forward to building great things with them going forward. Thank you also to our ambassadors. We have 239 ambassadors, and they are in 42 countries in 71 cities. What do our ambassadors do? Our ambassadors are a link to the community. They engage, they educate, and they inspire. And what have they done so far? They have hosted over 30 events in 20 cities in 8 countries, attended by thousands of people. We're very appreciative of that. And actually, tonight, we have 23 of those ambassadors here right now. Thank you for coming, representing 9 countries and 17 cities. Give them a thank you. And I also want to thank Kyle Armour. Kyle started this initiative for us. He's been running it, managing it, and he built it into the successful enterprise it is today. So thank you, Kyle. So what are we talking about tonight? Well, first, Mance Harmon. Also, most importantly, I have to thank our Hashgraph global community. We have 3,000 developers in both our Telegram and Discord channel. We've had over 20,000 SDK downloads. We have 6,000 unique web page visitors per day. We have 16,000 followers on Twitter. We just clicked over into 20,000 followers on Telegram. And 50,000 people have signed up on our website to get our daily email updates. So thank you for that. And one thing, and what you all have to know, all this community and everybody here, some of you have been following us for months, and some for multiple months, some for over a year. But everybody is early. This is just the beginning. So what are we talking about tonight? Mance Harmon, our CEO, is going to make an announcement. What do you guys think that's going to be? Public ledger. That's obviously coming. You saw that. And what do we need with a public ledger? We need a cryptocurrency, of course. That's also coming. You'll learn more about that tonight and coming forward. He's also going to be talking about governance. For technology this powerful, we need to have a strong governance model. And it's something I've spent a lot of time on as well. After Mance, Don Thibeau and Helen Disney are going to announce the Distributed Ledger Foundation. Don Thibeau founded the Open ID Foundation and the Open Identity Exchange. He's basically responsible for setting up the guidelines that govern identity on the internet. Helen Disney has been in the blockchain space since 2014 when she led community outreach for the Bitcoin Foundation. She also founded both Unblocked and the British Bitcoin Association. She's had 15 years of experience in public policy, having founded the Stockholm Network think tank. We're very excited to have their experience working with us. After them, you're going to hear me, again, talk about a free and fair voting initiative. And then you'll hear from Dr. Leemon Baird. Leemon will talk about security and fairness and speed. So buckle up. After Leemon, Jordan Freed, our Global Head of Business Development, will be talking about some exciting applications coming down the pike. Jordan founded and ran Buffer.com, which is a global VPN service, and he ran it as CEO until it was acquired in 2017. After Jordan, you'll hear from Gabe Leydon, who will be talking about some pretty amazing applications. Gabe co-founded and has run as CEO Machine Zone and built it into the multi-billion-dollar business it is today. So before we get started, I think we need to learn a little bit more about the two people that actually brought us here, Dr. Leemon Baird and Mance Harmon. Who are they? So they met working in a computer lab in the Air Force, and it wasn't any computer lab. They were working for the senior scientist for machine intelligence. This was in August of 1993, and they've been working together ever since. That's over 25 years. That's longer than most marriages. They are serial entrepreneurs and have founded and run multiple businesses together. Leemon has a PhD from Carnegie Mellon. He received that PhD in less than 3 years. Do we have PhDs in the audience? Anyone? Couple? 2 years and 9 months. Pretty good, I think. Who here has seen the movie War Games? Not many hands, but 93 on Rotten Tomatoes. I recommend it. Mance Harmon actually led the Missile Defense War Game Simulator at the Missile Defense Agency. He ran the real world war games. And he plays classical guitar. They are teachers by nature. They are open, generous, fun, quick to build a team around them when they recognize the power of this idea and the technology they've developed. I'm flattered to be part of this project and honored to help them shape and execute their vision. There is so much ahead. We are just getting started. And with that, please join me in welcoming my colleague and good friend, Mance Harmon.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Tom. Thanks for the introduction. It's amazing to be here tonight. I've actually been looking forward to this moment for 3 years, believe it or not. I'm sure you can imagine. And so thank you to those who are here in the audience. Thank you to those that are watching on live stream. It's flattering. We feel overwhelmed when we announced that we were going to be having the event and we opened registration for this theater, 1,000 seats, and registration sold out in 9 hours. That was unexpected, and we thank you for being here. So, where to start? I think we start back in 2012. Back in 2012, Leemon Baird, my good friend and co-founder, had a vision for how the internet should work, how online communities should be able to create and evolve shared environments in cyberspace, how we should be able to create trusted virtual worlds in which we are able to play together, to work together, to safely and securely be able to exchange goods and services without having to entrust our data and our privacy with a central organization. I remember in Central Texas, Cedar Park, a suburb of Austin, Texas, dozens of evenings at our favorite Starbucks, sitting with Leemon, just listening to his latest thoughts about how to solve this problem. I remember him telling me time and time and time again, convincing himself it was impossible to achieve the technology that he envisioned. But then in the summer of 2015, he had a breakthrough. Today, we call that Hashgraph. We first used Hashgraph for enterprise applications, and we developed the code base to be enterprise grade for those customers. but we always knew that was just phase one. And we were patient, thoughtful, sober-minded, and made plans for phase two. Tonight, I'm pleased to introduce you to Hedera. It is a public platform, a public hashgraph network with a world-class governing council. But before we dive in to the details of Hedera, we want to talk about what are the fundamental challenges that need to be overcome in order to ensure that a public network can be successful in today's market. We believe there are four. There are technology challenges, security challenges, problems with stability in the current platforms, and also governance. So let's talk about those. In terms of technology, the most interesting use cases require hundreds of thousands of transactions per second with just seconds of consensus latency. Consensus latency is the time it takes for the community to come to an agreement on the order of the transactions. When it comes to security, if these public ledgers are going to track the ownership of valuable resources such as money, diamonds, real estate, or art, then we have to expect them to be targeted. In other words, we have to prepare for the attacks. Preparation starts with a consensus algorithm and the formal mathematical proofs that are associated with the algorithm. In other words, to build a secure platform, we must start with solid math. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people talk about this industry as being the Wild West, right? You've all heard it, right? Why is that? Well, I think it's probably the case that everyone in here would agree that the platforms that exist today, one thing we can count on is they're probably going to split into competing platforms and associated cryptocurrencies. Well, that creates fear and chaos in the market, and it prevents mainstream adoption of those platforms. It has to be possible to bring both open innovation and stability to the platforms in order to get businesses to build enterprise-grade applications on top of them, let alone mission-critical applications. And then, if it's possible to build a stable platform, the question turns to, what is the correct governance model? Well, we believe that the governance model is one that's going to have expertise, bring expertise, not just in the technology, but in business operations, legal aspects of the platform, regulatory concerns, marketing and PR, and it has to represent more than just one organization. It's a governance model that should reflect the interests of a global constituency. In Hedera, we have solutions to these problems. It's built on the Hashgraph platform. This is the same platform that we've been building for years and delivering to our enterprise customers and partners. Tonight, Leemon is going to make some important announcements about the performance of our platform that we haven't yet released to the public. In terms of security, Hashgraph as an algorithm achieves a gold standard of security in the world of distributed consensus. It's called asynchronous byzantine fault tolerance. What does that mean? Practically, what that means is that Hashgraph is resilient to distributed denial of service attacks that other platforms simply aren't. Any platform that has a leader or a coordinator or some type of synchronous process that it depends on is susceptible to DDoS attacks. Representative algorithms are Paxos and Raft and PBFT, and DPoS. In addition, Hashgraph addresses a whole set of concerns that other platforms don't even consider today. We refer to this property in Hashgraph as fairness. It brings fairness to the consensus system itself. It ensures that transactions actually count as happening when they reach the network. It also ensures that there's no single party that can prevent transactions from entering the network, nor can a single party control the final consensus that the community ultimately agrees upon. No single party can influence the order of transactions for the community. In other words, practically, what I'm saying is that Hashgraph can, for the first time, directly address the creation of provably fair markets, auctions, time-limited business transactions, and games. Only Hashgraph has this fairness property and has math proofs that it, in fact, exists in the algorithm. Well, what about stability? The Hedera platform provides a set of controls that makes it possible to actually bring stability to the platform. Tonight, Leemon will introduce a concept that we call state proofs. And simply stated, state proofs make it impossible for a network node running in the platform to make a copy of the platform, an official copy, a copy of the official ledger, if you will, make changes, and then pass off those changes as being accepted or valid. Hedera also makes it possible, the state proofs make it possible for the governing body to specify what changes should be made to the nodes, but then ensure the precise time that those changes are applied to the nodes in the network, and guarantee that they are applied to the nodes in the network. In addition, Hedera brings legal controls to the platform that others don't have. The Hashgraph technology is patented. What does that mean for you? First off, no license is required to use the platform. No license is required to use the services. No license is required to build smart contracts on the platform. The software that you end up developing is your software. You can license it however you want, and it will not be encumbered in any way by Hedera. You never even have to talk to us if you want to build product applications on top of the platform. That's not what the patent is for. In addition, what we are going to do with version 1 is release the source code for open review. Anybody that wants to take a look at the source code will be able to do so. You download it, read it, review it, compile it, and verify that it's correct in the same source code or the same product that is being downloaded to be run in the nodes in the network. The bottom line is that we will have a stable, transparent platform that encourages both open innovation, but the code base and the cryptocurrency will not fork. Hedera will not fork. I promise you. Well, if we have those mechanisms to provide a stable platform, what's the right governance model? You know, what is it that we should build in terms of governance that is equal to the technology that we brought to the table? We have a split governance model. Open consensus with permission governance. Open consensus simply refers to the notion that anybody that wants to run a node in our network will be able to do so. At scale, we anticipate there will be millions of nodes in the network. They'll be running these nodes on regular computers. Nodes run by regular people on regular computers. Okay? In addition, we have a permissioned governance model for the organization itself, the operations of Hedera as an organization. What does that mean? Well, when it comes to pricing, technical roadmap, legal aspects of the organization, marketing, regulatory concerns, all of the parts of the business, for this, we have established a council. We have taken and applied the design theory that was first introduced by Dee Hock back in the 1960s when Dee founded Visa. Prior to it being Visa, it was Bank Americard. We've taken his design principles and applied them to Hedera's governance model. This is a model that is not in the market today, but we believe solves the governance problems that we see in our industry today. There are 39 industry leading organizations that will end up being a part of this organization that provide the governing council. These members will provide expertise in business, technical aspects, legal, regulatory, all of the things I've previously mentioned. We're not just going to have a list of advisors. We are going to have a council of decision makers that are providing the stewardship of the platform and the associated cryptocurrency. We are working to finalize the governance terms. When these discussions and work is completed, we will make an announcement about who these members are within the organization. So what about the platform? Where are we in this process? Right? There is a test network up and running today on 3 continents. It's built on top of the same platform that we've already used for enterprise applications, the Hashgraph consensus platform that we've already taken to market. On top of that platform, there is a cryptocurrency service that supports native microtransactions, micropayments. In addition, we have a distributed file storage system for applications built on top of the platform that brings a set of security guarantees that I think are new and unique in the market. Leemon will talk about that a little bit later tonight. And then finally, what about smart contracts, right? Everybody wants to know about smart contracts. We've taken the Ethereum virtual machine, we've put it directly on top of the platform. We support Solidity scripts out of the box, right? All of this is happening now. Today, the test network is restricted to internal testing and working with a few beta customers. That will change very quickly. I'm anticipating that we will begin to open up the network to additional beta customers as early as May. Maybe the end of April, as early as the first part of May. And of course, yes, there is a token, a coin associated with this platform. Why is it that we have a coin? There are 2 reasons. Number one, you have to have a cryptocurrency or at least a scarce resource in a public ledger to provide the security of the ledger. In a public ledger, there has to be something that provides scarcity to prevent certain categories of attacks against the consensus process. The cryptocurrency provides the needed scarcity. So the cryptocurrency actually is required to ensure the security of the network. Secondly, when applications use the platform and they make API calls to the services I've just listed, at the same time, they will be making micropayments for the use of those APIs. So with every API call, a micropayment will be made using the platform cryptocurrency. In other words, the token is needed for the functioning of the platform. In summary, we have solutions for the categories of problems that I've outlined previously. We provide the needed technology, security, stability, and a governance model that we believe will move the industry forward in a way that it's previously not been able to achieve. Thank you. This symbol is called an HBAR. And tonight, we are dramatically raising the bar for the industry. Tonight, we are raising the HBAR, right? So we are going beyond one small group of nodes to provide consensus, beyond one person to control the code base, beyond one company to trust for expertise, beyond one sector of applications and use cases, and beyond one government for the stability of a global cryptocurrency. We are Hedera, and tonight we welcome you to the future. Now I would like to welcome my colleagues and friends, Don Thibeau and Helen Disney, to talk about the Distributed Ledger Foundation. Thank you. All right.
Let's rock 'em. Hello, coders. And I do mean coders. There's really two kinds of coders that I want to talk to tonight. One is the obvious set of software coders, the tool makers in the audience and those of you that are online. Your enterprise architects, your devs, your engineers. But there's another set of coders that we need to bring into this conversation, this global conversation. They're rule makers, they're legislators, they're policy makers, and they're regulators. We need to bring these two sets of codes together. One set of coders does performance testing against machines and networks. They measure throughput, they measure fault tolerance and security. The other set of coders measures human behavior. Their compliance of people and institutions is expressed in multi-party contracts that cross jurisdictions and that meet regulatory requirements. The thing that both sets of coders have in common, as well as all the global stakeholders, is this notion of trust. We hear that word again and again, particularly in this new world that we live in. So let's define it. Not so much like trust grandma, but we have to have systems that are reliable, systems that are repeatable, and systems that are secure. We do that because what we want to have be part of both sets of codes is trusted transactions, whether that's voting or consensus, etc. We want to transact at high volumes, high velocities, in a wide variety of circumstances. If we get this right, where the tool makers, the software coders, and the rule makers, the regulators, can align these code bases, great things happen. The world really changes. Think about MasterCard a couple of decades ago, where originally a localized bank, a localized sets of merchants created this new card system. But it was through the extensibility and scalability of the regulatory environment changing, as well as the technology changing, that we now have a trust framework in everyone's pocket. All the stakeholders understand the terms of trust in these new MasterCard and Visa networks. We don't have to look very far to see what happens when we can align rule makers and tool makers in the New York Stock Exchange. What a fantastic explosion of both wealth creation, technology, and regulation. We have trusted transactions within the New York Stock Exchange, or the FTSE, or the Hang Seng that create enormous new wealth. It is because we've been able on a global basis to reconcile these two sets of codes that new things, new opportunities, new wealth is created. In the world of standards, in the OpenID Foundation, we have the OpenID Connect, which becomes the standard for how identity is managed on the internet. If we get alignment, we get more trust. Innovation is accelerated, both in the legal world and in the technology world. Markets expand, and governance is trusted. But all's not well in the world. That comes as no surprise to the world in general and in this strange phenomenon that we're seeing every day in the mass market. We've got three known unknowns. We've got the first factor, which is markets correct. So as mass media begins to tell grandma about Bitcoin, and grandma begins to risk her savings on these new kinds of instruments, that mass market coverage drives public sentiment. And when public sentiment is driven, political intervention is only a matter of time. It's no surprise to anybody in this room that the SEC is struggling with how to regulate this new phenomenon, and that other legislators in Colorado and Arizona are doing their best to help blockchain industries grow in their states. That's not only happening in the US, but it's happening on a global basis. So when governments intervene, we have to be mindful of this kind of conversation that occurs between the public and private sector. On February 14th, I was on the Hill at the House Science and Technology Committee, and the Congress people were asking the experts, well, what should the role of the government be in this blockchain and distributed ledger world? And someone said, well, let's have a national commission on blockchain. Now that may be a good idea. It may be a not so good idea. The question is the industry ready for that conversation between the public and the private sector? To what extent can the industry lead that conversation? And what happens if it's an ill-informed enterprise? What happens is lawyers litigate. So let's move beyond that and see if we can't create something new, a foundation that crosses all the different permutations and solution sets in this wonderful industry, this very disruptive technology. Let's see if we can't align the tools and the rules so we can expand the pie in the marketplace for everyone. Let's build on what's built, not just Hashgraph, but the great work that's been done in other Ethereum Foundation, the Sovereign Foundation. Let's pull them all together so that we can improve what we mean by governance. So we can define it in terms of standards, in terms of voting, in terms of how consensus is reached in governance, much in the same way that it is built into software. If we get it right, if we understand governance and define it in a new way, we can inform governments. So let's take this approach. If we want to do this new foundation, for sure it has to be nonprofit. It must be global, because the internet is not a single jurisdiction phenomenon. And it has to move across industries. Most importantly, this approach has to be inclusive, and it has to be technology agnostic. So we're proposing something new tonight to map onto the concerns that you heard earlier about governance of these systems to the relationship of governance to governments. And we're going to introduce you to what we're calling the Distributed Ledger Foundation. It's a new foundation that has two jobs. It is to secure the work that is being done right now to help better align these two code bases so that we can build on what's built. The other thing that it will do is to begin to inform governments as a private sector-led conversation about what regulation should look like, not only on K Street, but also in Beijing, also in Singapore, and in London. So we could talk a lot about what the foundation aspires to be, but here's what we're going to do first. We're going to go to the best place on the planet for governance. The Stanford School of Law and Informatics has been researching blockchain governance for the last 6 years. The professors and student bodies in that law school has been looking at this phenomenon and trying to understand how law and the governance of the future will develop over time. So on the 9th of May, we're going to pull the best and the brightest into a conversation and talk about standards for smart contracts, aligning the financial interests of stakeholders in these new business models and consortiums, and yes, how voting works in these new systems. We think if we can get it right in Stanford, we're going to be able to take that show on the road, because we have to. My friend Helen is going to tell you about how we're going to move from Stanford to London, from London and beyond. Come on, Helen, we'll talk some more about it right now.
Best thing.
Well, thank you, first of all, so much to Don Thibeau for your leadership of this important new foundation. And even more importantly, perhaps, thank you to the entire Hedera Hashgraph team for inviting me here today from London. I hope that I can humbly provide my part in being a bridge between different parts of the world that are working on these important technologies, and also to play my part as an advisory board member of the foundation. It's amazing how life works out. I've kind of come full circle from spending 15 years in public policy formation to going to a Bitcoin conference, or being involved in organizing a Bitcoin conference 4 years ago, where I suddenly started to understand the amazing impact that these technologies were going to have on some entrenched business and social problems that we have in the world today. And so I kind of put aside my public policy career and said, I'm just going to devote myself to this one thing of trying to teach the rest of the world, people who are not developers or are not from a financial background, why this is more than just about payments and currency, and why it actually has this much wider and very, very important role in creating the technologies and the internet of the future. So just to talk a little bit about what we're actually going to do with the foundation, we want to do 3 things. We want to be intentionally international and consult globally. So we're a global organization, as Don mentioned. We want to collaborate across the whole of the industry. There are many, many people already doing great work in this field, whether they're academics, whether they're lawyers, whether they're companies, building the technologies of the future, and we want to include everybody under this new umbrella. And if we can do both those things simultaneously, we'll end up with this private sector-led public-private partnership, which I think will give us a very strong foundation to influence public decision-making. And that's key, because policymakers, regulators, and legislators are getting much more interested in these technologies, but there's still a huge lack of understanding about what they actually are, and definitions are important. So we're going to practice what we preach. We're going to go on a roadshow around the world. So we're going to start by taking our message global. As Don mentioned, we're going to be in Stanford in May. I'm going to be involved in organizing our London event. We're going to bring together some of the leading UK universities and other partners for that. And then we're going to travel to continental Europe, to Amsterdam, where I actually had my first experience of Bitcoin, and where they had the first Bitcoin Boulevard. And other parts of Europe are doing great things as well. We've got Crypto Valley in Switzerland. We've got Estonia's e-residency program. So we can see examples of global best practice that we want to bring into this conversation to show what's really going on. And hopefully, by doing all of that, we'll get a bird's eye picture of the industry and the chance to really bring those ideas and those best practices into the public conversation. So we're going to reach out to all the players. As I mentioned, there's already many foundations out there. We'd like to work with all of them, and we'd like to work with all of you. This is not our foundation, it's your foundation. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. I'm already involved in various organizations, including the British Blockchain Association, as mentioned at the beginning, and also recently giving evidence in Parliament in the UK to a new all-party parliamentary group. And there are other think tanks and other groups working on this. So we want to bring everyone together, and by doing that, amplify and magnify the voice of the industry and give us greater influence. We've got 3 key things we want to do. We want to talk mainly about governance, and within that, we want to talk about voting best practices, what are the new financial models being created, and what should be done, what are the issues surrounding open standards. When I spoke to the UK All-Party Parliamentary Group on Blockchain, this was one of the first meetings that's been held, the chair of the group, the Right Honourable Grant Shapps MP, said that he'd looked up in Hansard, which is a record of all the parliamentary debates in the UK, how many times the word blockchain had been mentioned, just to see. And there were only actually 5 mentions of it in the last 4 years. So only 2 of those, in fact, were actually about the innovative potential of the technology, and the others were sort of subsidiary to another conversation. So this is still a huge education process for people in decision-making bodies. And if we're going to trust this new trust layer of the internet, these policymakers need to strike the right balance between, on the one hand, not stifling innovation, but on the other, also safeguarding the public interest. So this is our foundation, the Distributed Ledger Foundation. We're about collaboration, consultation, and partnership. And we need your membership, your ideas, and your inputs into our future research, our future events, and we want this to be all about you. As Don mentioned, this is a kind of a call to action, so we're going to start now. We've got the roadshow in progress, but we want to hear from you what you want. So this is open source. We're practicing what we preach. We want to be distributed around the world, and we want to be decentralized in how we approach this topic. We're not providing all the answers from on high. So we very much hope that you'll join us. I'm very proud to be a part of this. I would love you to be a part of it and be part of the future of this amazing technology. So thank you very much. I'm now going to pass the stage to Tom Trowbridge again, who's going to tell you some more exciting news about one of our very first initiatives surrounding the issue of voting. So thank you very much, and welcome up to Tom.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Helen. Before I start, update for everybody. We now are over 24,000 live streaming right now. Pretty impressive. So, thank you, Helen. Thank you, Don. I think everyone in this room knows the risks of ill-conceived or uninformed government intervention. The real risks at the state level, the federal level, and globally. We all know this. We are relying on Don and Helen to help navigate those paths for us and for the entire industry. And to help do that, and to get it started, and to show our conviction in the importance of this effort, and our conviction in Helen and Don, tonight we are announcing a grant. We want this foundation's work to start immediately and its scale. And so we're announcing tonight a grant of $500,000 to begin their work. But there also is a way this technology can help government. We can help government be more representative, and we can help citizens and voters. And I think we all think of distributed ledger technology. The first applications that come to mind are commercial. And you're going to hear more about those applications later this evening. But besides commercial applications, what else is this technology good for? You know, what is our bigger purpose? How can we help the world? We say through free and fair voting. Across the US, voter turnout is 40 to 60%, and that's true across those kind of the Western world. There are a lot of people that take voting for granted and don't vote. We think about 1.8 billion people across the world who are eligible to vote don't. And we can help with that. But there is a bigger problem. The bigger problem is, where does your vote not count? Where voting is corrupt. Where due to ballot box stuffing, voter intimidation, and voter fraud, and voter suppression, your vote is taken away from you. That is a much bigger and more critical problem, and something that we think we can help with. There is another way. There are 52 countries we counted with election interference over the last 5 years. That is covering billions of people. But now, with the intersection of smartphone technology and Hashgraph or distributed ledger consensus algorithm, we have the potential to change the whole way we vote. By 2020, we think 78% of the world will have a smartphone. And with a smartphone, with a fingerprint, you can validate your identity. You combine that with distributed ledger technology, and there's a whole new paradigm. Let's look at this video. Here, someone is pressing on the phone, opening it up. They validate their identity with a fingerprint. Now, that could be a facial recognition, it could be a retinal scan, but they validate their identity, and then they are served up a ballot because it is clear that they are an eligible voter. They vote, validate their identity again, and then that ballot is anonymized and added to the public ledger, where anyone can see the results. How much corruption do we eliminate when that happens? How much easier is it to vote? With Hashgraph's throughput and decentralization, we are the first technology that can actually support a nation's voting. And that we can do so by increasing security and resilience against local corruption. That's the vision of the Free and Fair Voting Initiative. But there are problems we can't solve. We're not going to get North Korea to vote. But there are problems we can fix, and we can help prevent the ballot box stuffing, the intimidation, and the suppression. So how are we going to start this? We are turning, again, to the Distributed Ledger Foundation, and we're announcing a second grant of $500,000 to help launch this effort. We want them to build on the work already done in this area and determine the best practices and standards for distributed ledger technology voting. This will take time, money, development, testing, and integration of a stack of applications which haven't yet been built. And so where else do we start? Well, that's up to you. It could be a town in the US, or in Sweden, or South Africa, or Vietnam. If you have an idea of an application or a technology that's important in this initiative, please reach out. Let us know. We want to be supportive. If you are part of a jurisdiction that wants to test this or implement this type of voting, reach out to us. We would love to be supportive. Bring us your best ideas. We're ready to engage and to make this happen. We want to eliminate corruption in voting and give everyone a voice for the first time. Thank you. But how do we achieve this? Please join me in introducing and to discuss the details of his technology in depth for the very first time, and to release the results of the speed test for the very first time, my colleague and friend, Dr. Leemon Baird.
Hello. It is so good to be with you today. I wish we could have more than 1,000 people in this room. I'm sorry we're limited to 1,000. I thank you, the 24,000 that Tom said is watching us right now, although that's not true. It's actually up over 30,000 now. So thank you for watching. I appreciate your interest. Thank you. Hedera Hashgraph is built on Hashgraph. So what is Hashgraph? Let's talk through this. So Hashgraph is an algorithm, a consensus algorithm. If we can go to the next slide, there we are. It's a distributed consensus algorithm. It is a way for a group of computers to come to an agreement on an ordering of transactions and timestamps on them. The group as a whole puts a timestamp on the transaction, not just one person. It gets consensus on this, and it is secure, fair, and fast. But what do those mean? Well, security. What we want is to be able to know a timestamp on a transaction and where it is in history, and actually know at a moment in time that you know the answer and that you know the answer. And you want to never be wrong, and everyone will know the same answer. That is Byzantine fault tolerance. If you can do that, even when some of the nodes are malicious, and even when a malicious person can even influence the internet and maybe have firewalls and things. That's what Byzantine fault tolerance is. Notice I said you come to a moment when you know for sure. That's different from some of the proof of work systems where you just become more and more sure over time. Those aren't Byzantine fault tolerant because you never know for sure. You just become more confident. And you can start having problems with partitions with that sort of a system. So what you want is Byzantine fault tolerance, where you absolutely know, guaranteed, and as long as not too many people are malicious, they cannot stop this or make you come to a false consensus. So that's BFT. So Hashgraph is BFT. But that's not all. In order to prove that, you have to make some assumptions. What do you have to assume? Do you have to assume something about the timing of the internet? That messages going across the internet will always get there fast and will never be lost, or always get there within some time period. That sounds like a reasonable assumption, unless you've heard of botnets and DDoS attacks. Sometimes the attackers will go out and compromise a number of little computers on the internet, web cameras and printers and little things, and have all of them flood one computer with messages so much that it can't send or receive any messages. It basically shuts it down from the rest of the internet. If you have a synchronous Byzantine fault tolerance system, the one that doesn't have this good property, maybe you could shut down the whole network by just shutting down one computer. So what you want is asynchronous BFT. ABFT is saying that, yes, we can survive that fine. If they shut down one computer, we'll still reach consensus, and we'll still always be right and never be in disagreement. And we'll know that we're right, and we'll know when we've done it. So that's ABFT. We want to be able to survive malicious nodes. We want to be able to survive firewalls that are stopping our packets or letting some through and not others, or delaying them by an amount of time that keeps changing, or all sorts of strange things, and these distributed denial of service attacks, DDoS attacks. So this is what ABFT is. This is the gold standard for 30 years. It's a very old term. There are actually people that have sometimes made up new terms that sound sort of like ABFT, newer terms that are weaker than ABFT. But the gold standard, the one that is stronger, is ABFT. And that's what we've had for decades in distributed computing and in databases and in Byzantine fault-tolerant computing in general. So we have that. But in addition to that, we have something called state proofs that are very important. So the state proof means that you have a client, you have a wallet program on your phone, and you call up some computer in the network and you say, please do a transaction for me. I will digitally sign it to say I want money to move, I want my cryptocurrency, to move from this account to this account, or I want to store a file, or I want to ask you, hey, does this file exist? And the node gives you an answer. It says, no, that file doesn't exist. Are they lying? Do you know they're telling the truth? Do I have to trust one single computer to not be malicious? With a state proof, that one single computer gives you this small little proof. They say, that file doesn't exist in the ledger, and here's a proof that the whole community had a consensus on that fact. They can't lie. That's what a state proof does. Or you say, please do this cryptocurrency transfer from one account to another. They say, yes, it has gone through. Or yes, this is the balance. And then they give you the state proof, and they can't lie. It proves that this was the consensus of the community, and no one bad actor can compromise that. State proofs are very important. It makes them truthful. Furthermore, I said it's the consensus of the community. Which community? What if we forked and there's now two communities that I didn't know? No. It not only says it's the consensus of the community, it tells you which community. That's an interesting concept. That is saying that if one of these nodes takes our state is all the files we're storing, all the cryptocurrency balances, all the results of the smart contracts, and it copies it, it forks it, and gets a bunch of other computers to help it, and forms a new network. And so now you have two ledgers that have been forked, and each of them starts making changes, and they keep evolving over time differently. This wallet on your phone knows for sure which one it's talking to. It knows that it is talking to the official one that it's always been talking to and its consensus successors, and not to this fake one that was set up or this new one. It knows that it's a separate thing. So of course, technically, you can always copy information, but you can't fool anyone into thinking that it's the original or that it's the official one. So this is what state proofs allow us to do. And this is another form of security that is important. Not the security of the consensus, but the security of the clients that are using the consensus. This is good. Ooh, but you get something else too. It gives you the ability to avoid the forking. Yes, I love that forking thing. It's a great thing. By the way, did you notice that Mance brought up no forking and he meant it in a different sense? He was talking about not forking the code base and the organization and legal controls. I'm talking about not forking the state and having technical controls where, yeah, you could fork, but you could never lie about it. You'd never fool anybody into believing it. So it's two different kinds of forking. In other words, what we're bringing is stability. That's what we're talking about. So we have that. And that's what the state proofs give us. But they do also give us something else. They give us the ability to do sharding in a very powerful way. Know what is sharding? Sharding is we have a network of, say, 1 million computers around the world. That's what we want to grow to, is millions of computers, ordinary people running ordinary machines. Anyone can do it anonymously without telling us who they are. Millions of computers around the world, and to really take advantage of this tremendous amount of power, you want to break them up into groups. So we don't take each file you're storing it and store it on every computer in the world. You have a group of a few hundred over here, and you store it in those. And your cryptocurrency is stored in an account, but not every computer in the world has to store it. There's a few hundred over here that store it. Each shard is doing different things. And a transaction has to be approved by the consensus of the shard. And we randomly assign people to shards. Now, if you're going to do sharding like that, there are lots of different ways of doing it. And some people are talking about ways of doing it where everyone is equal, but one shard is more equal. You could talk about we have a real chain and side chains. And this asymmetry can actually cause some problems with the flow patterns of these transactions, where if I have 1 million shards, am I going to be 1 million times faster? Maybe not. It depends on the application, depends on some other issues. What you really want to do is have everybody be basically equal. That Alice has a cryptocurrency account stored in this shard, and it's only in this shard. And Bob has one in this shard, and it's only in this shard. That gives us the better ability of truly scaling up. But then the problem is, how do you make it work right? How do you ensure that the amount of cryptocurrency never changes in the total in the world? That we can send cryptocurrency from Alice to Bob, but Bob just can't create it out of thin air. How do you do that? And the answer is, well, we have the shards talk to each other. They send each other messages. This shard, when it knows that we want to transfer from Alice to Bob, decreases how much Alice has, sends a message to this shard, and this shard increases how much Bob has. But wait, how do you trust the message? If it was just some random computer over here doing it, maybe they're lying. How do we know they're not lying? We use a state proof. So any random computer in this shard makes a message that is the consensus of everyone of this shard. We, as a consensus, agree that Alice has authorized this transaction, and at the point in history where that transaction was, she did have enough cryptocurrency in her account. It should happen. We have reached consensus. This transaction should go through. So they decrease her account, create a message with a state proof that shows the message is valid, and the message now can come over to the shard where Bob is. And the shard says, this was a duly authorized message, consensus of all the hundreds of computers in that shard. We are going to increase Bob's account, and we're sure that we're keeping the rules. Like one of the rules is the total amount of cryptocurrency can't change. We're sure that although we're increasing his account, it must have gone down over there because that was the consensus. And so this is very important for sharding. This allows us then to have a sharded system where there isn't a single master with some sides. Everybody is equal. You may actually have a master shard that assigns people to shards randomly, but that just happens when they join the network. It's not a lot of throughput and not a lot of traffic. And so you can have efficiency. And so we end up having this kind of security. This kind of security then means that if you're using something like Hashgraph inside of each shard, which is ABFT, now the giant ledger as a whole, with all the shards as a whole, is ABFT. We can have security of the whole system because we had security of the pieces, and we had the state proofs that allowed them to talk to each other securely. And that you could use to make things faster. Not always. It's common to say, well, if I had n shards, I'd be n times faster. Yes, sometimes. Sometimes not. Depends on the application. Depends on the pattern of how they interact. If everybody has to talk to one shard, then we all run at the speed of one shard. But if all the transactions are happening between different shards, then we run much faster. So a good ledger ought to have sharding to be fast, but it also had to have single shards that are fast to be fast in the cases where you're limited to the speed of a single shard. We could have both. But that isn't the only kind of security we should care about. A totally different kind of security is bugs in the code, bugs in the theorems. All this stuff, all this math stuff was mathematically proven. But is it true? Math journals sometimes publish proofs that are wrong. We discover it years later. The four-color theorem had false proofs at one point that people believed, I think, for a decade. Amazing. So how do we prove things and trust it? There is something called formal methods, where you turn this proof that humans can understand into a form that computers can understand, and computers check it for you. And people have actually found bugs in widely deployed open source software. When they got down to trying to get the computer to understand the proof, they said, oh, I see, there's bugs in the software. We have a department now, we have a group of people in our team working on formal methods, taking our ABFT proofs, formalizing them, putting them into a computer in a way that the computer can check. And they have already proved some definitions and some lemmas and some parts of it, and they're making rapid progress. And it's on our website. You can get it, and you can look at what they've done so far. It's fascinating. It's really actually very cool. Formal methods is the future of software, I think. And they're doing that, and that's, I said, proving that the proof is right. But you know what the next step is? The next step is showing that your software is correctly implementing the algorithm that your theorem said was ABFT. You just complete the chain. And that's the next step, and we will do that. We are going to follow this chain until we have the whole chain so the consensus software itself is known to be right. And then you expand outwards. Then we do the gossip software. Then we do some of the other software. Then eventually you go down to the operating system and the chip and all those things, and people are working on that. So formal methods are another form of security. Again, it comes down to math, but a different kind of math. COQ is the name of the system we're using to formalize it. A very cool system. Yeah, talk to me sometime about it. It's really interesting. So we have security. But you know what? Security with ABFT is the best security you can achieve. You cannot do better. So we do better. How do we do better? Not by being more secure in the ABFT sense, but by being more secure in a different sense. We have fairness. So let's be very clear on what we talk about, what we mean by fairness. First of all, it's not fairness, it's fairness of ordering, fairness of timestamps, fairness of access. This is what we're talking about, 3 specific kinds of fairness. And what do we mean by that? So here's the idea. You do a transaction, it goes out to everybody, and we really want to know what the timestamp is on it. Maybe we're going to put them in order, and we really want to know what order they're in because we're doing an auction, and it matters what order you're in. So what we should do is we as a community, our consensus algorithm, should put a timestamp on this transaction that is the true time that the transaction reached the community. Wait, the community is not a computer, it's a bunch of computers. At what time did it reach a bunch of computers? That's not one time, it's a bunch of times. I could ask each person in the community, when did you receive it? And I'll get a whole list of times. Oh, well, you know what we can do is we can just say, when did you first reach most of the community? In other words, take that list of times of when each person received it, sort them in order, and take the middle one. That's a reasonable definition of what it means to be the true time at which a transaction reached the community. We don't want to penalize you if there was one straggler that didn't get it for a long time. And we don't want to reward you for just one computer that happened to get it. We'll do it when you reach the majority of the community. And in our gossip protocol, you're going to rapidly reach every single person right after that. So that's a reasonable definition of the right time, the true time. Now, what is that going to be? We take the time when you reach everybody, we put them in a list, sort them in order. what you're going to find is there's a whole bunch of times in the middle that are all about the same, and then there's some outliers, a few that are much later and a few that are much earlier. That's typically what you see, a bell-shaped curve with a bunch of times in the middle that are all about the same. We're taking the middle one. But what if an attacker wants to change this, not change it, but influence it to be not the truth? What if an attacker, one of our nodes is malicious and wants us to have a consensus timestamp that is far from the true timestamp that it ought to be? Well, they really can't. They could say, I received this in the year 37 billion. Okay, so that's one more time at the top of the list. And when I take the middle of the list, maybe I've gone down by half a notch, and all those times in the middle were about the same, so they really haven't had much influence. Or maybe they said, I received it while dinosaurs were roaming the earth. Okay, well, now you've moved me half a slot down this way. But still, there's that big clump of numbers in the middle. They're the same, and I picked one. In other words, it is very hard for attackers to drag the time very far from the true time of what it ought to be. And that's what fairness is. If we have 100 computers, each of them has 1% of the vote in some sense. And it's not possible for one malicious computer or a small group of malicious computers to drag you too far from what the truth is. In fact, as long as the majority of those times are honest, the middle one will be honest or will be right between two honest ones. Guaranteed. So this is fairness of timestamps. Sometimes that matters. The timestamp matters. You have a legal contract that says, do this by noon on Tuesday. So now you have a fair timestamp from the community saying, yes, you did it 1 minute before noon on Tuesday. You succeeded. And now, because of the state proofs, you can know for sure that they've agreed. And not just you can prove to a court that you did it before noon on Tuesday. You can prove to somebody else that you did it before noon on Tuesday. We could prove to another shard if we cared about that. All those things. That's the timestamps. More often, more important, is the ordering. Do we have fair ordering? For an auction, you care who bid first if two people bid the same amount. For a game, you care if you shoot me and I dodge. Which one happened first? Did you shoot before I dodged? You get a point. Or did I dodge first? You don't get a point. So often, the ordering matters. But what we're going to do is say that the official order is, well, whatever order the official timestamps are in. Our consensus order is the order of our consensus timestamps. And so if it's hard for an attacker to drag the consensus timestamp too far from what it should be, then it's hard for them to have more influence than they should on the order. So we have fair ordering. We also have fair access, which is just a way of saying these systems are very resilient. What if you call up a node and give it your message? I mean, you're a node. You call another node and try to pass the message on to it, and it's malicious and doesn't pass on your message. Well, who cares? I'm calling 10 nodes a second. Most of them are honest. I will very quickly find a node that's honest and give my message to an honest node, and it'll pass it on. Not a big deal. Or maybe I'm calling multiple nodes at the same time. And if one of them is dishonest and doesn't pass it on, who cares? I was calling other nodes at the same time. Your messages spread out very fast. It becomes very difficult for one malicious node to stop your message from spreading to the community. And if you are a client, you can call up a node and very quickly know whether or not they did it, and they can't lie to you. State proofs, again, give you fair access in this sense. They can't pretend that they gave out the message when they didn't. And they can tell you whether consensus was reached or not, and they can't lie. And if they're malicious and they don't do anything, after a few seconds you say, well, forget you, I'll try somebody else. And if you really want to hedge your bets, you can talk to several nodes at once. This is fair access. So fair timestamps and fair orderings is sort of this math proof that it's fair because of various math things, and fair access is just inherent in the nature of this gossip protocol, along with the fact that we have state proofs, which makes things nice, because the node can't lie to you. So this is fairness. Security is great. Fairness is a new kind of security, which is also good. But you know what? Neither of those is of any good to you if you do not have speed. We need the system to be speed. Not every application needs it, but lots of applications need it. And you can get speed by sharding, but if you have certain patterns of transactions, even sharding doesn't help very much. So what you want to do is have sharding, but also have really fast single shards. So the question is, could we handle hundreds of thousands of transactions even in a single shard? And could we reach that latency, the time to finality, of just seconds? Very fast. This is the question. Latency here is the time until you absolutely 100% know you're right. Okay, so let's talk then about the Hedera Hashgraph performance. We have been doing performance testing, and we've been doing performance testing on nodes on Amazon, AWS, spread around the world on 5 continents, and we've been doing it with the number of nodes equaling the number of governing members that we are going to have, and we have done lots of different numbers of nodes as well. We've done lots of stuff. If you want to know all the details, look at our website and get the paper that describes it all. If you want to know about the formal proofs, look at our website and get the paper that describes it all. If you want to know the algorithm, look at the website that has the paper that describes it all. Oh, and you may be curious about our governance. Guess where that is? Hashgraph.com. You look at the website, you find that. So, what does the performance look like? Well, what does it need to be? You know, if you're a major credit card, global, around the world credit card, how fast are they? Well, a typical one might run at 2,000 transactions a second on average, with peaks up to over 50,000. So this is the kind of speed we're talking about for a really major international system, is a couple thousand a second, maybe peaking up to over 50,000. And the published requirements from some of these public credit cards are the merchant must, or the system must approve within 7 seconds. You swipe your card in the store and you have to know the answer within 7 seconds. And the answer is usually, please reinsert your card. The chip didn't work. I'm probably the only person that ever has that problem. So what did we do? 50,000. We asked it to do 50,000 on a network spread around the world, not 50,000 peak, but average, continually doing 50,000 transactions per second, spread around the world into 5 continents, in 8 regions, from Tokyo to Canada, from Australia to Frankfurt, Germany, from Sao Paulo in South America, up to Seoul, South Korea, and both coasts of the United States, which might have been 8. If it wasn't 8, I forgot one. Those 8. And we were getting good speed. If we asked it to do 50,000 per second, we were getting 2.9 seconds of latency. So in a couple of seconds, you have your answer. Not a confirmation, a 100% sure, guaranteed, I know I have the consensus and I know everyone else has the same consensus, guaranteed. That's what we were getting. Thank you. So I'm happy with that. That's good. That means we can handle even the peak of a major credit card system. But just for fun, we asked it to do twice that, 100,000 a second. And of course, there's always these trade-offs. Read the paper. It has all the trade-offs and all the curves and all the numbers. But there's always trade-offs. If you want to do a lot, it starts to slow down your consensus. And it slowed down our consensus by less than half a second. We actually went up to 3.3 seconds with 100,000 transactions per second. This is the kind of speed we're talking about. And this is spread around the world. What if you were willing to settle for a mere continent? What if we were willing to settle for merely across the United States, over 2,000 miles? Converted to kilometers, that's a bunch. Actually, it's 3,000. So over 3,000 kilometers going across the country. And we want to have the same kind of consensus latency that you're seeing here. So just for fun, let me show you that example. What happens when you're in one continent and we want the same latency to time to finality to absolutely guaranteeing knowing it? Does it run faster than 50,000? Well, it does run a little bit faster. 250,000. So this, thank you, this is running at 250,000 transactions per second. And look at that latency. It's still just 3 seconds. Now remember, we have all sorts of caveats. This is, anyway, read the paper for all the caveats. I'll say them all again at the end. But these are preliminary results. I think we can make it faster in some ways. In some cases, it'll be slower. And in some other cases, it'll be faster. And in some other cases, it'll be slower. But these are the numbers we're getting. But you know, you just have to try it. That's what a continent looks like. What does one region look like the East Coast of the United States? You just got to try it and see what it says. And what it says, in that case, is 500,000. And it's 3.5 seconds latency. That's kind of cool. So that's just one region, though. We're not going to run a shard in one region because I don't trust it. It's all about trust. But here's the bottom line. It is not that these numbers mean anything. There are lots of trade-offs. If you use more people, it becomes slower. But if we were to tune it, it would become faster. And if you spread it over a bigger region, it becomes slower. But if you spread it over a smaller region, it becomes faster. And there's all of these things. We need to talk about them. They're in the paper, and we will be giving more results in the future. But you know what? If you were just to look at the math, you would think this is an algorithm that really ought to run at about the limits of what the laws of mathematics allow and what the internet allows for an ABFT system. Because all we're doing is the bare minimum of spreading out the transactions with their timestamps and signatures to begin with, plus a tiny bit of information, 2 hashes, actually 2 compressed hashes that come down to a couple bytes, just a little tiny bit of extra information. That's the only bandwidth we use. And then the consensus part of it you get for free. That's how the hash graph works. You use no bandwidth at all for the consensus part of it. You just send out the bare minimum of the transactions themselves with their signatures and their timestamps, and then you add a little tiny bit for 2 hashes. That gives you a hash graph. It gives you a history, so you know how we talk to each other, and then you get consensus for free. No communication at all. You look at that, and mathematically you say, you know, it ought to run about as fast as any ABFT ever system could. And do remember, this is 1 shard. Okay. But, so you know what that means. That means that for many applications, you're going to get n times faster with n shards. For some applications, you'll get 1 time faster with n shards. For most applications, you'll be somewhere in between. So you'll be faster in most applications with sharding. But a single shard is this fast. You'd expect it to be about the limits of mathematics, and it kind of looks like that. Who knows? That's what we're seeing right now. It's early days. But what about signatures? We want to have digital signatures on all of our transactions. When Alice wants to move from her wallet or from her account to Bob's account, she has to digitally sign it. Can we verify that many digital signatures? Now, do understand there's digital signatures involved in the consensus itself. We were doing verification. When you see these numbers on the screen, these are for when we had very strong encryption, very strong digital signatures being verified, very strong hashes for the consensus part of this. But for the transaction part of this, for actually verifying signatures on each transaction, how much time is that going to take? And we thought that's going to be very slow on a typical computer. We don't want a supercomputer. We want a typical computer, except maybe we could use the graphics card. And we weren't able to find any libraries that would do that, but we were able to get a library written to do that, and we were able to test it, and we were able to see and answer the question, can we verify hundreds of thousands of digital signatures per second if you use the graphics card, one graphics card, on the computer? And when we tested it, what we discovered is that the answer is no. The speed is not hundreds of thousands. It's 1,000,000. Okay. This is what we're talking about. Now, again, if you have a smaller graphics card, it'll be slower. If you had a bigger graphics card, it'll be bigger. But it's a single graphics card. It's very fast. This is faster than we can even do consensus in a single shard. So basically, it looks like it's fast enough. I mean, that's really what the bottom line is. It looks like it's fast enough. All right. Read the paper for caveats. It's early days. I'm sure we'll have various things changing over time. But we would have thought from the math that this stuff ought to be pretty fast. And it looks like it's pretty fast. It looks like it's pretty running at the limit of what you can do. So we are fast, we are fair, and we are secure. Hedera has papers, a white paper you should read. It has other papers you should read. You should look at the really cool math stuff in COQ. That is Hedera. Go to hashgraph.com and download all this stuff and look at it. Download the code and run your own timing tests. It's fun. That is what we are doing. We are Hedera, and you might wonder, great in theory, works on your test net that's spread around the globe right now in 3 continents, but is anybody actually using it? Is there anyone actually using this? Is there a real purpose for what you're doing? Has anybody built on Hashgraph or Hedera? Is anyone currently building on Hashgraph and Hedera? And is anyone about to build on Hashgraph and Hedera? Good question. Watch this video. Thank you.
It started with a 30-year-old consensus algorithm. Mathematically speaking, It was perfect. Practically speaking, it was unusable. We weren't the first to discover it or rediscover it. We were simply the first to ask, what if we could fix it? What if we could re-engineer it to power a global decentralized network? So we did. The private permission ledgers came first. The community came next. That was the moment things got really exciting. We started testing relentlessly. And when the numbers started coming in, we knew we had it. An impossibly secure, lightning-fast, perfectly fair public ledger. Hedera is really the beginning of a new era. For the first time, we're going to be able to build the internet we want, all powered by native nano payments. An internet where objective news reigns again, because publishers no longer rely on advertising dollars. An internet where the economics of spam no longer make sense, but the costs to send an email are still negligible. An internet where musicians are fairly compensated for their work because they can sell it directly to fans by the stream. Of course, this isn't just about transforming the internet as it is today. It's about maximizing the potential of the internet as it will be tomorrow, where all major elections happen online, free from manipulation and voter suppression, where sprawling virtual worlds can be spun up in an instant, no server necessary, where privacy is guaranteed, and where your identity is always controlled by you. This isn't Hedera's vision of the future, it's yours. Where we go from here is up to the engineers and the innovators who build on this foundation. Ready to get to work?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome VP of Business Development for Hedera Hashgraph, Jordan Freed.
Thank you all very much. Wow, this is really overwhelming. I don't get to say this often, but Leemon was wrong about something. He told you all that there were 30,000 people on our live stream, and they just told me on my way out here, there's actually been 81,000 unique people that have joined us and tuned in tonight, and currently there's over 40,800 people watching live. So to all of you here today, and to all of you watching at home, thank you so much. We appreciate your support. In 2008, in a moment that changed the internet forever, Satoshi Nakamoto introduced the world to the idea of distributed trust, marking the first generation of distributed ledger technology. The market responded with a question, and that question was, what do we do with this technology? And so the market responded by moving things like title deeds to properties, and intellectual property rights, licenses and accreditations, and even diplomas onto ledgers. And yet the market responded with another question, which is, in a system where we don't necessarily trust each other, how do we transact with each other? And so we've seen smart contracts as ways for people to transact with each other fairly, marking the third generation of distributed ledger technology. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is a really big night. Tonight marks the beginning of the fourth generation of distributed ledger technology. A generation that is fast, so fast in that we do hundreds of thousands of transactions per second. A generation that's fair, so fair, and can we go back one slide, by the way? Thanks. A generation that's fair, so fair in that we generate a fair order of transactions, and a generation that's secure, so secure that even financial services organizations would use it. As it turns out, with something fair, fast, and secure, we open up a whole new genre of applications that before tonight simply weren't before possible. And I'm going to tell you about some of them right now. The ad tech industry is one industry that's riddled with problems, as some of you may know and may be able to gather from the headlines behind me. It's an industry dominated by centralized ad systems that process billions of transactions per day, hundreds of thousands of transactions per second. But there's a problem in ad tech today, and the problem is that an advertiser cannot attest to the provenance of a click, leading to a lot of distrust and a lot of unwanted ad spend. One company in our ecosystem working to solve this problem are the folks over at Extreme Push. Extreme Push is based out of Dublin, Ireland. They're a very impressive company, and they're taking the Hedera Hashgraph technology offering and using it in a way to help advertisers identify and reject click fraud. This is helping their customers defend their ad inventory from unwanted transactions. They're one of the first in the ad ecosystem to do so today. But let's get really serious, right? Let's talk about mission-critical systems. Let's talk about stock exchanges. Let's talk about governments and militaries. What about power plants and utility companies? Let's be honest, these organizations are not deploying distributed applications today. But that's all about to change. OpenVMS is a well-known enterprise operating system spun out of the Hewlett-Packard Company. It's trusted by some of the most mission-critical organizations on planet Earth. OpenVMS is allowing their customers to take spare OpenVMS clusters and use them as nodes in the Hedera Hashgraph network. But they didn't stop there. No, they took our technology and they're integrating it directly into their operating system, allowing these mission-critical organizations to spin up distributed applications with ease. Now let's talk about other mission-critical systems, right? We talk about security. We talk about bank-grade security. But are banks really using this thing? Are financial services organizations using it? The answer is yes. CU Ledger is a CUSO, a credit union service organization that serves the credit union industry right here in North America. That's represented by more than 6,000 credit unions serving more than 105 million members. CU Ledger is enabling their member organizations the ability to build arbitrary distributed applications on the Hedera Hashgraph technology stack. But tonight, I'm happy to share with you all that CU Ledger has gone global. CU Ledger is now serving credit unions on more than 6 different continents around the world, represented by more than 250 million members. In a partnership with the World Credit Union Organization, CU Ledger will be using the Hedera Hashgraph platform to solve one small part of the cross-border international payments problem. Now, we've talked about credit unions, we've talked about ad tech, and we've talked about mission-critical systems. But ladies and gentlemen, the Hedera Hashgraph technology platform has implications that stretch all the industries on planet Earth. And another industry where we've seen a lot of growth is in the healthcare industry. Intiva Health is a startup in our ecosystem that we're really happy to support. What they have done is they built the first immutable and primary source verified credential management platform. Their Ready.career platform is helping with the fast placement and ongoing credentialing of doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals, another first in their respective industry. Now, let's turn it up for a second. Do we have any Guns N' Roses fans in the audience tonight? Show of hands. Come on, Guns N' Roses. They're probably watching right now, so come on. Artbit is a project by Matt Sorum, the lead percussionist from Guns N' Roses, and Matt Sorum has a grand vision. I hope I can do it justice. Matt Sorum is using the Hedera Hashgraph technology platform to turn the world into a stage. By combining the Hedera platform with gamification and augmented reality, he's helping artists get compensated directly for their masterpieces. This Friday, Mance Harmon and I will actually be with Matt Sorum, Billy Gibbons, and the famed street artist Shepard Fairey as we make a special announcement and demo the Artbit platform. We hope to see some of you there. Now, at the beginning of this presentation, I talked about speed, and I saw some looks on your faces. Who needs hundreds of thousands of transactions per second? What are some applications that actually use that sort of throughput? And the answer is games. 2 games, next slide please. 2 games in our ecosystem, just to point out what's possible. One is Kitten Catch. Kitten Catch was built in less than 24 hours at a recent Hashgraph hackathon. It opens up a whole new genre of gaming, and Kitten Catch represents that class. It's reliant on zero centralized gaming infrastructure. It's played entirely peer-to-peer with complete fairness. Hashman is a parody of the famous Pac-Man game, built by Calvin Chang, a developer in our ecosystem from Singapore, who recently hosted a developer meetup where more than 200 developers showed up. Calvin is actually now teaching developers how to build distributed applications on the Hedera platform. At Hedera, we do things differently. For us, business development is really developer advocacy, and we put our money where our mouth is. Our ecosystem is exploding. We have more than 3,000 developers in our Discord and our Telegram communities today. We have more than 20,000 downloads of our software development kit. And by giving developers the ability to run Solidity scripts directly on the Hedera platform, we further open up our development community to the more than 20,000 Solidity developers on planet Earth today. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our partners. At Hedera, we've been integrated with inbound interest, and we wouldn't be able to serve our ecosystem without our system integration partners. So tonight I want to thank, and some of them you may have noticed outside on your way in, but tonight I want to thank PricewaterhouseCoopers, Big Consulting Group, Abacus Consulting Group, Open Crowd, and the folks over at TXMQ for helping to grow our ecosystem and support some of the amazing developers that are building distributed applications. So let's give them a round of applause, guys. Now, if you are really interested in learning more and you want to take action right now, you can go to hashgraph.com/Discord, where you can join our Discord community and talk to some friendly people like Ken Anderson and Tim McHale, two of our top developer advocates who can help answer questions like, how do I install this SDK? And they can even help you build your first distributed application today, right now. So go to hashgraph.com/Discord, and we hope to see you there. Now, it's one thing to hear this all from me, but I thought it would be really interesting if we brought someone here tonight, someone from our ecosystem, someone who knows what it's like to make the tough decision as to what do we integrate into our technology stack? Do we want to trust Hedera? Someone who's made a multi-billion-dollar business making big bets on new technology. You may be familiar with some of these games behind me: Mobile Strike, Final Fantasy, Game of War. These are some of the most downloaded mobile games on planet Earth today. To be exact, they've been downloaded more than 500 million times. They're from the game studio Machine Zone, which is a multi-billion-dollar company with more than 1,000 employees in their Palo Alto office. But Machine Zone, at their core, is much more than a game studio. Machine Zone is a technology company. And here tonight to tell you how Machine Zone is leveraging the Hedera Hashgraph platform, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a warm welcome to the founder and CEO of Machine Zone, Mr. Gabe Leydon.
Thanks, Jordan. I appreciate
Got
it.
this.
Got it. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Hi. How are you? Let's have some fun. My name is Gabe Leydon. I'm co-founder and CEO of a company called Machine Zone. We've been around for 10 years in Silicon Valley. We're in Facebook's old office on Page Mill Road in Palo Alto. And we're here tonight to talk about some technology that we've been working on. But if you don't know who we are, I'd like to just give you a little bit of a reminder.
Seems that the enemy has hit a bit of a wall.
Thank you. You've probably seen them on TV maybe a few thousand times, right? So we are definitely known for video games, and we are prolific marketers. But we're here tonight to talk to you about the technology that runs our business. The theme of our talk is a distributed and decentralized AI mesh. Machine Zone has been working on a technology for the past 6 years that we believe will revolutionize the world. And latest upgrades in distributed ledger technology will allow us to do this. When you see what we've started with, here's the ledger. keeping track of a currency. And then the brilliance of Ethereum to keep track of a contract inside of the ledger. But both of those, the old systems are too slow to run an AI mesh. You need something that can move incredibly fast if you want to compute the world, which is what we're here to do. So the platform that we believe that will make this happen is a platform we call Satori. Satori is a Japanese word for enlightenment, and that's the theme of the platform. We want to read and write the entire internet. So let's talk about some characteristics of what Satori can do. So Satori can process 500 million events per second. This is a number that is kind of hard to comprehend, but we're going to get into some demos very shortly to give you an idea of what that means. But paired with Hashgraph, 500,000 consensus transactions per second, we're going to be able to build a distributed computer that will be able to read and write the entire internet. Where I think distributed ledger technology is going to go is to create a network of machines that no single data center could ever house and will compute everything all at once. But Satori doesn't just do fast event processing. It can connect, keep open connections with millions of devices at once. And it can also handle different file formats from data to audio and video. And on your computer at home, you will be hosting a bot. And that bot will be processing the world's information in real time. And that bot will be running bots designed by developers, by our developer community. So let's give you some examples of what you can do with this. So with structured data, it's pretty straightforward. This is Twitter, all of Twitter, 110,000 tweets per second. Right here on the top left corner is a bot that is tracking all the trending topics. In the center, you'll see a domain classifier that is reading every tweet and defining them as an event, as a deal, as a personal message, news, or opinions. On the top right, you'll see a language classifier that's classifying the tweets by their language, their source language. And on the bottom, you're seeing a translator. We're translating this entire feed in 32 languages in real time. This is a fun project that we made that we called Big RSS. We wrote a web crawler, and we subscribed to every single RSS feed on the internet, over 10 million RSS feeds. And it's now all being processed through this one feed. We wrote a custom SQL parser that allows us to write SQL code directly to that stream, and now we're getting a filter of only blogs. So now you can imagine the kind of data with 500 million messages per second, what we're talking about, from either reading and writing all of Twitter at once or every blog on the planet. And of course, you can make games. All of our games run on top of the Satori platform. The reason why we made this, the genesis of the technology, is we wanted to make a game that the whole world could play at the same time. So here's an example in Game of War where several thousand players are fighting over a central wonder to become the king of the game. So not only can we process, parse, and run artificial intelligence on structured data, we can also work with audio and video. This opens up new possibilities of decentralized distributed streaming music platforms. Also, video publishing platforms, where you can be part of this network, no censorship, totally decentralized social networking. But I said before, this is about a distributed AI mesh. So the next demo I'm about to show you is a video where an AI bot attempts to summarize the objects that it sees in a human fashion. So this is a video of somebody just walking down the street. And if you notice the messages, we see that the AI is reading and defining all the metadata that it sees on the screen and attempting to explain it in a human summary. A group of people walking down the street. A display case filled with lots of donuts. Got that one wrong. A group of people shopping at a farmer's market. Whoa. Crazy, right? So this is live. This is not a white paper. This is a live platform. So I'm going to jump into a demo of this. Are we ready? Say hello. You see person, face. Once the square gets you, that's it. The square's got you, right? It's going to get you too. But look at this. Bottle. Wow. So any device, any data type can be published into Satori in real time, and AI can read the stream. Anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Let's go back to the presentation. Thank you. But of course, with 500 million events per second, you can do all of this at once. So let's give an example of what that means. Smart cities. Smart cities are run by a distributed ecosystem of devices that are usually siloed inside of many apps. One app running the stoplights, one app running weather sensors, one app looking at video cameras. With Satori, you can ingest and compute the entire thing in one ecosystem. So here's an example of every cab, every bus, every stoplight camera, all flowing through a single app. The metadata is extracted from this application, and new types of opportunities appear, like cameras directing where cars should go. Different types of automation where we literally can start imagining whole countries being run by AI. All the devices connecting into Satori with a bot running absolutely everything. So one example that we've built is we have decentralized ride sharing. Through Hashgraph, it's very fast consensus algorithm. We're able to give driver IDs to the phones for the rider, and a trusted rideshare payment with Satori guiding all of the routing, all of the booking, because it's able to look at the entire ecosystem at once in real time and make decisions. But of course, there's definitely more that you can build. Here is an example of a grid, a video grid, where you can now do very complex traffic analysis with cheap cameras, any camera. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just got to connect to the internet and connect to Satori. That's it. And once it's connected to Satori, it can run any bot from any developer. So every camera on the planet will be able to perform the highest functioning AI possible. All it's got to do is connect to the internet. That's it. And you can connect 500,000 live video streams into one meta channel. One. So when you are able to network huge distributed systems like this into one real-time ecosystem, things like real-time energy trading and monitoring become possible. Parking availability, never a problem again. Never. Cameras are updating you in real time, every single available parking spot in the city. And self-driving car mesh, how are all of these cars going to communicate with each other? What's going to do it? So this is the opportunity that Satori and Hashgraph unlock. But of course, at the scale that we're talking about, we're not just talking about cities, we're talking about the world. When we designed this system, we imagined every single endpoint on the internet communicating with each other in real time. And this is a view of every plane in the world, except for China and Russia, by the way. They don't let us. But this is every plane in the world. So you can quickly imagine a map of everything, which is exactly what we're going to build. And thanks to Hashgraph, we're able to provide a trusted identity and transaction layer inside of this real-time view of everything. So Satori is live. This is not a white paper. You can go to satori.com right now and start working with the platform. As we integrate Hashgraph into the ecosystem, we will completely decentralize it, and we're going to use our token that we call Lit. Hey, we're really good at marketing, okay? We don't screw around. We're very good at, do you see the rocket, everybody? Do you see the rocket? That's good marketing, okay? So with this new incentivized program, we can actually decentralize our ecosystem into your home PC. PCs around the world with fast consensus can now solve problems that were impossible with 14 consensus events per second. With 500,000 consensus events per second, we can kick off a level of automation that would be impossible inside of a data center. So please, join us in our Telegram on Lit by Satori, or our Twitter, Lit by Satori, or please visit our website, satori.com. Also, we're going to be hosting an after party tonight at the W. It's a venue called The Living Room, so you're all welcome to join. It starts at 10 and it ends at 12:30, so it's all night. So we hope to see you there. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Mance Harmon.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Hey, I just want to add something. Let me add something. Where's the music?
This is, we've been benching this, by the way. This is very, very real. Without consensus this fast, platforms like Satori would not be possible. We could not decentralize it. I spent $100 million building data centers for this project. And now with this fast consensus, I can actually decentralize that entire infrastructure and perform compute on a level that is just impossible without fast consensus. So I just want to say thank you to Mance and thank you to Leemon. Leemon really is a genius. He has solved a very, very difficult problem. And it was a great event, so I hope you enjoyed my presentation. But thank you again, Mance. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Well, look, I started the evening by saying that I've been looking forward to this night for years. It's taken an enormous amount of work to get to this point, and I realize that there is an enormous amount of work yet to be done. But this is an effort we embrace. Make no mistake, we consider this a mission, not just to change the internet from what it is today, but to maximize what it can be tomorrow. Tonight, we're going to take a break. We're going to celebrate, but tomorrow, we're going to ask you to join with us in this mission. Thank you for being here tonight.